And so if I get lost along the way, I will refer to this. So books have their fate. Ideas have power. Seeds sprout. Consciousness arises from reflection and resistance. Land connects or disconnects. Political ideas come from movements. Food is life. Women and nature are the source. So that's my argument. Feminist investigations of food encompass our lands, seeds, oceans, forests, and bodies, and involve the labor in preparing, producing, consuming, caring, and protecting. Feminists show multiple stories, histories, and legacies of food, but in particular, their work tells us of a story of how women hold up more than half the sky. Women do this through their daily unwaged social reproduction and waged work. And linking this to the questions of alternatives, food and women's making of food is often situated in the realm of the private and therefore hidden. The demystification of the labor of love and care by radical feminists of household work and the making and thinking of food is an important contribution in understanding food politics. By problematizing the kitchen and the home as private and off-bound, it brings social reproduction and social relations to the center stage. When food is brought into the public realm, it is often through discussions about nutrition and health, food insecurity, agriculture and industry, trade and investment, GDP, and so forth. It gets situated in the domain of the expert. In so doing, it gets removed from the control of women and stripped from its rich, multiple, and alternative potential of alternative meaning making. In an attempt to reground and reclaim food politics as embedded in land, seed, forests, ocean, and labor, which centers rural and urban working women, articulations and experiences, feminist political economists assert and argue that class struggle is women's struggle. We do so as to ensure that women's histories, various histories of dispossession, oppression, and exploitation is not an add-on, but instead to help us understand the key processes of capitalist patriarchal accumulation. We see this clearly reflected in Africa through structural adjustment programs and the neoliberal onslaught of our public goods and commons. For those of us who have worked and examined on issues relating to land and seed through the lens of structural adjustment, post-colonialism, neo-imperialism, and globalization, we know full well that the economic imperative is overtly social, political, ecological engineering. This particular period of deep ecological crisis asks us to re-evaluate inherited formulations about development, work, production, and industrialization. If we listen closely and investigate women's histories with regards to food, say for example fish, sorghum, maize, sweet potato in southern Africa, we locate very quickly alternative stories. In particular, we observe multiple relations of food to body, food to nature, food to community. Specifically, we come to find food as part of and not separate from community, land, and seed. Through feminist investigation, we see that commodification of the commons hides women's alternative ways of interpreting relationships of food, nature, society. Often the bifurcation and the separation of nature from society, as inherited in the scientific revolution, is less dominant in rural women's settings. Household farmers or small-scale farmers who feed themselves and their communities in southern Africa demonstrate a deep understanding and acknowledgement of this, and this is reflected in their practices, where they would say not only do women hold up half the sky, but the sky holds them up too. The rural women's seemingly quiet yet subversive practices such as seed saving, non-conformity to monocropping, and the use of fertilizer, etc., reflect knowledge of the inextricable and reciprocal link between the land that they till, the seed they nurture, the water bodies they protect, the seas and forests and oceans, and the relationship to food, joy, sustenance, which is brought to the table. Food is thus not food as commodity, far from it. Food, land, oceans, seas, and forests as non-commodity has the potential to allow women to claim, self-reliance, and independence. Contrary to the dominant assumption that the problem women have is that they are excluded from the market and excluded from capital. And if only included, they will no longer be impoverished. And most importantly, most analysis would put it as this. The problem is that capital has failed to reach into our kitchens and into our bedrooms. This presumption has a twofold consequence, that we presumably remain feudal, pre-capitalist, and whatever we do in the kitchen and the bedroom is irrelevant to social change. It is to this end that institutions do their best to add and assist us in entering capitalist relationships rather than destroying it. Anything contrary must be nonsensical, irrational, incomprehensible, for the actual reality of the world is very different and clearly demonstrated in many respects. But we have to ask ourselves, does this reality of food, which women speak about all the time, food as reflected as emotion, physical, geography, material, social, cultural, situated in pleasure, joy, memory, home, power, do these have to be suppressed? That the lived daily experiences of the acts of making food, feeding, eating, communing are intimate and transformative inside and out. They're loaded with occasion, sentiment, and belonging. Do these have less meaning? The meta-narrative which trumps the other meanings of food that gets subordinated to the capitalist economic meaning, we need to ask ourselves, what are the problems with this assumption? One here is that in subordinating the interrelated meanings of food and to the economic predominant or imperative means that food gets reflected only through power of corporates, commodification, etc., which is fundamental, yes. But we don't begin to find the tools to understand what does it mean to flourish beyond that. How do we overcome the greed and the gluttony, the separation, the alienation, the waste and inequality? We simply need to walk up Cape Town Kloof Street and see the glut of food. We simply need to go to Woolies, we simply need to go to Epping Market. Food is in abundance, food is there. The question is not only about the inequality of food, not only about who gets to have food, but the important question for us, certainly as feminists as well, is about the equality in terms of the entitlement to the meanings of food. Radical feminists and eco-feminists suggest that critical to our overcoming capitalist patriarchal neocolonialism and ecological destruction is the transformation of needs. A shift towards a qualitative dimension away from the quantitative. Thus, from the standpoint of commodity production, this translates into the valorization of use value over exchange value. This call for transformation and new meaning and imagination of what it could mean to flourish therefore foregrounds a logic of sufficiency over and above the capitalist logic of efficiency. This, in essence, is to organize around another logic, one which centers people and not profit, one which sees food beyond merely feeding, but rather as nourishing, satiates, and land not as a factor of production or seed as a labor input only, but in its full spectrum and in balance. And perhaps this is the beginning of the conversation of not within the system, but beyond. How do we garner the insights from radical feminist political economy approaches and feminist political ecology insights, and continue to stretch towards an emancipatory project which does not only validate hierarchies, but circumvent the bifurcation and the many ways in which the multiple crises of our society is reflected back at us? How do we challenge the Lockean ideas and debunk Harden's tragedy of the commons as feminists have? How do we make visible these problematic assumptions which have entered into our food politics? How audacious of the rural women who stake a claim to drive and determine their own identity? How audacious are they when they begin to say that they don't want to conform to the theoretical outlines and debates of production? They are rejecting the conception of land, seed, and food as alienated, suppressed, and which sidelines them. In so doing, They are mapping alternatives for a different society and refuse to be framed within an idea, or within patriarchal ideas of what is development, modernity, and rationality. Women are self-identifying and choosing allies to write a counter-narrative. They are not drawing on old secular and masculine powers. And in fact, the counter-power pushes back. Power flexes back. Instead of navigating with her stories, the dominant class, race, gender powers, disparages, denies, and ignores. By doing so, they attempt to make invisible the multiple realities of women in Southern Africa, which do not fit conveniently into the economic and political imperatives of the dominant paradigm. How do we begin to claim and reclaim the political ideas which debunk the idea of the false separation between the economic, the political, the social, and the ecological, the private and the public, the state and the home, production and reproduction, paid and unpaid, rational and irrational, body, mind, nature, and society? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donna. I think the link between capitalism and patriarchy is so often just not explored in that way, because so often the assumption is that if you are developing a feminist approach to food, you're talking about gender and incorporating women, whereas what you're saying is we're thinking in a totally different way, redefining what we understand by the meanings of food. Thank you so much for that. Angela.